And welcome to this week's live video. This week I'm going to be talking about the Phoenix Group Coaching Program. So I'm going to be going over what we cover in the program, just some details and how to sign up, how to book a discovery call, and hopefully you will have some questions at the end that I can answer. So to begin with, the group coaching program is a 2-month program. And what we do is weekly group calls. Usually they're at 1 p.m. EST time. Although when we have different cohorts with different requests of different times, sometimes we open a second call time or change the time to suit people's needs. So over that call, you have a chance to bio-individualize your experience and ask any questions in regards to that week's content or your general process. And then during the week, I will usually have follow-up emails with individuals. They can write to me 1 or 2 times during the week. And then I also follow up the call with different links and insights and just generally summarizing the end of each call. We also have call recordings. So the call is recorded, and if you miss that call, you're able to watch the recording, and you can also send in your questions in advance and then have them answered during the call, and if you aren't able to be there. So to talk about the content of what we do in the Phoenix Group Coaching Program. So week 1 is all about mindset and intentions. So I'm sure you've heard Dr. Hyder talk about this many times, how important mindset is when it comes to healing. So just to give a bit of background on this, so in 2008, a study was done on the effects of arthroscopic lavage, which is a really common knee surgery for osteoarthritis of the knee. And basically what they want to determine by this study is if this surgery, which is a really common surgery done on many, many people every year, is actually effective or not. So in one group, people got a fake surgery, and in one group, people got a real surgery. And what they found in the follow-up over months and even years is that there was no difference between the people who got the fake surgery and people who got the real surgery. And in fact, in some cases, the people who got the fake surgery actually did better than the ones who got the real surgery. So what this means is that, just the belief that people had a surgery was actually what healed them. And this is quite, mind-blowing, because obviously a surgery is something very physical, something very mechanical. They're going into your body and doing something. But even despite all of that, the mindset proved in the end more effective. So by 2016, at least 4 other really common procedures proved equally ineffectual in similar types of studies. So this is just to reiterate how important mindset is. So in this chapter, we actually ask everyone to do some kind of, I call it an inventory of your life in a holistic sense. And we talk about body and mind, spirit and community, environment, wisdom, creativity. And you go through the different facets of your life and just try to find out if you're kind of living in a truly holistic sense. Many factors such as lack of community are as big a risk factor as excessive sitting or even smoking. So we want to make sure that people get off to the right start when it comes to viewing healing from a holistic lens. So the next chapter is sort of the opposite of that chapter, in the sense that it's very prescriptive and scientific and precise. And in this chapter, we talk about long COVID labs, long COVID supplement list, and also vaccine injury labs and supplement list. And we talk about, specific modalities such as maybe stellate ganglion block or ozone therapy or nicotine gum, different types of therapies that we've known have worked for different people. And during this week, you will have a chance to access the medical team and speak with them on the call to ask any questions that you have about the labs and about your lab results. You'll also be initiated in how you can actually get your lab order and your prescription protocol, how to follow up in Push Health, and all of this type of information is covered in this module 2. And here's an example of some of the lab tests that we ask for. For nutrient deficiencies, to find out about things like microclotting, and a profile for autoimmunity. There are just different lab results that help us kind of determine what specific things are driving your long COVID. And of course, there is a chance to do other types of labs, such as the InCellDX lab, which is the viral persistence of the spike protein. And there's also an opportunity to work with Dr. Shelton, the functional medicine practitioner, and he also offers many different labs, and you can find out about those if you watch some of his lives. But these are the basic labs that we ask people to get, and then they're able to have these labs ordered, and then you go to do them somewhere close, at a lab close to you. There's also the prescription protocol. So this is also covered in module 2. We talk about the Dr. Hyder's prescription protocol. Again, you can have access to the medical team for questions, and Push Health, the platform, the telemedicine platform, where you can ask more questions and have an asynchronous chat to talk about this. So module 3, we talk about whole foods. And the reason why whole foods are really important to talk about is because, of course, food can either be a medicine or it can be something that's inflaming you. And this is very different for different people. So, for example, people who have a history of autoimmune conditions might find, let's say, bell peppers or tomatoes or eggplants really inflammatory. Someone else might find dairy really inflammatory if they have a lactose intolerance. So it's about bio-individualizing and finding out which foods are specifically inflaming you, nourishing you. We talk about food quality within a certain budget. So if you can't afford all organic, which things to buy organic, which things to not. If you can't afford all pasture raised and the wild caught fish, pasture raised animal proteins, then what quality to choose after that. And we talk about food budgeting, eating out, and intuitive eating. So all of these things are really important, of course, in the process of recovering from any kind of inflammatory condition, as well as long COVID. So next we talk about digestion, because of course, if you could be having the best diet in the world, but if you have poor digestion, then this means you're not assimilating any of the nutrients that you need to heal. And a lot of people actually have gastro issues as a result of long COVID, or they have the volume turned up on their pre-existing conditions. So here we talk about mealtime hygiene, food sensitivities, things like non-celiac gluten sensitivity, how to test for that, how to do an elimination diet to determine if you have something like non-celiac gluten sensitivity. There are different ways. I would say, doing an elimination diet can be almost as effective as doing a lab test. So we talk about what are the kind of symptoms. A lot of people think that food sensitivities only happen immediately after eating a food. So things like bloating and gas and indigestion, but actually things like brain fog, fatigue, joint pain are all symptoms of food sensitivities that, could be the result of, things like non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And actually a lot of the delayed, let's say, food sensitivity symptoms are neurological. And of course, that's something that long COVID also has in common. So it's important to kind of eliminate this. So here is an example of a food journal that people fill in during the group coaching program, and you can get an idea of a patterning. So, okay, this food made me feel a certain way. Whenever I have this, this is what I have. And this also gives me an idea what people kind of determine as healthy or not, because often people say that they have a healthy diet, but I'll find that they're actually eating a lot of high histamine food, or they're eating really late. They're doing fasting, but their fasting window is actually really late in the day, and it's in the evening instead of earlier in the day. And actually, with fasting, it's really important to take account of the microbiome's own circadian rhythm, which is earlier in the day, and eat your bigger meals earlier in the day rather than later. So it also really helps me to kind of determine what people are eating. And here is the instructions for the food and mood journal. We talk about all different food, drink, the energy that you have, digestive reactions, and this helps people to get a better idea of how their digestion is working. So the next module is about toxins. So we talk about sugar, fats and oils, gluten, coffee, environmental toxins. So I've talked quite a lot about this in other lives. This idea of which fats and oils are good and bad. There's no such thing really, actually, as a good fat or a good oil. It's just about the processing. And when something is hyper industrialized, refined oil that's extracted with hexane and then goes through this long process of heating and winterization and deodorizing and degumming, then of course that's not helpful. But the same oil could be a cold pressed oil, such as cold pressed sunflower oil, and that is perfectly suitable for something like a salad. So we go into depth about that. Sugar, blood sugar dysregulation is something that a lot of people suffer from, and they're unclear maybe what the symptoms of that are. And they're on this roller coaster of energy, and of course fatigue is something that a lot of people suffer from in the context of long COVID. So it's important to get your energy regulated through the consumption of proteins and fats, and especially avoiding refined sugar. So we speak about that, and then of course the gluten, as I mentioned in the previous module, and coffee, which is an interesting one because coffee is actually one of those um, foods that it really depends on your genetic predisposition, and people genetically metabolize coffee in different ways. You could be a fast or a slow metabolizer, and then this will determine if you're one of those people who is shaky and nauseous after you have coffee, or if you feel clarity and energized, and then that will also in turn determine whether or not coffee could be healthful or not for you. So we talk about that. And then, of course, environmental toxins in the form of skincare products, household products, ways, how to reference the products that you're using, and find out if they are, if they contain parabens or any kind of inflammatory toxins that could be leading to further inflammation in the body. So the next module is about sleep and movement. So we talk about sleep environment, how to optimize your sleep environment in terms of light, noise, the materials that you use for your bed. We talk about sleep and nutrition, which foods, for example, increase tryptophan and or melatonin, and help to regulate our sleep. We talk about the different things that regulate circadian rhythms, and what you can do to kind of make sure that your cortisol awakening response is heightened in the morning as it should be, and that you get gradually more tired throughout. Well, not to say that you should be tired during the day, but we should be the most awake in the morning, and then gradually throughout the day until we fall asleep. We want to feel kind of sleepy from the moment that the sun starts setting. So this is sleep and nutrition. And then when it comes to movement, um, This is a really important one because a lot of people suffer from post exertional malaise in the case of long COVID. So, we talk about how to measure your heart rate, what heart rate zone to stay in when you are working out in the context of long COVID, and how to not trigger this post-exertional malaise, which a lot of people seem to experience, and that can actually set you back further back than when you even started having long COVID, which unfortunately is the experience of quite a lot of people in the group coaching. So this one is really important in order so finding movements that keep your body active, and things like qigong, which Dr. Haida talks about, which has a nervous system regulating effect, but doesn't keep your heart rate so high that it's going to trigger this post-exertional malaise, but rather boosts mitochondrial function. So week seven is all about fasting. We talk about, how does fasting work? This idea that when our body is in a fasted state, it's able to go to use autophagy and to use other processes in order to optimize healing, because your body's not just focused on digesting food. So this is a really great practice that a lot of people have, felt like they've got totally better just from this one practice. So this can be really powerful. And if you see the interviews with Dr. Mabeen that were part of the last summit, and he's also going to be in the next summit, then you'll get an idea of what the mechanisms for that are. But we also talk about, fasting can be contraindicated in the case of something like adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction, because fasting requires cortisol which is a stress hormone, to do a process called gluconeogenesis, which is releasing glucose from the liver in order to be used for energy. So glucose and ketones are released, and ketones are used for the brain and for energy. And that process is, in fact, in a way, a stressed state, because the body is being asked to dip into a certain type of reserve in order to keep going. And of course, that state has its benefits, and that's what Dr. Mabeen talks about, and that's what we're after. But the state can also have, if anyone suffers from cortisol dysregulation, or a cortisol or a stress and adrenal and cortisol related disorder, then that can actually in some cases be contraindicated. And of course, in the case of women in their childbearing years, sometimes losing a lot of fat, or being in a fasted state for too long or too often, can actually cause hypothalamic amenorrhea, and other types of hormone imbalances that you just wouldn't want to see and wouldn't be conducive towards healing. So we also talk about that in the case of fasting. So module 8, this is the last module, and we talk about meditation, gratitude, earthing. So earthing is interesting, and it's actually something that has helped the sleep of quite a few people in the group coaching programs. It's this idea of being connected to the Earth's electromagnetic field, and there's actually a lot of data on this and a lot of studies that are done on this, which is quite surprising. And they show things like blood sugar regulation and cortisol regulation through earthing, which is connecting to the Earth's electromagnetic field. And this is something we would have done by default, just being outside and walking on the earth. But now, living in apartments, living in high rises, wearing rubber-soled shoes, sometimes we can be disconnected from the earth for many, many months. So, some people can benefit from getting an earthing mat to sleep on or to stand on during the day. Or, of course, the best thing is just to get outside as much as possible. So we speak about this, and Meditation, this can be a great practice for people who are inclined for it, especially for nervous system regulation, which is one of the key features of recovering from long COVID. So we focus on this and cold exposure, which, as I'm sure most of you know, Dr. Hyder is a really big fan of. This can really help with brain fog, increasing dopamine in the morning, also regulating the nervous system. And in this week, I also do a challenge of unplugging. So I ask people to not read news, watch the TV, maybe do a social media detox. I think that one of the commonalities that I see in a lot of people who are suffering from long COVID is that they, have been left a bit in the dark as to why they're suffering from this and how they can help themselves. And as a result, they become really avid researchers, and they're constantly reading and finding new information, watching videos, which is great. Of course, it's great to empower yourself and take health into your own hands, but there's also a limit where we can become overwhelmed by this information, and we can also feel that our next healing or growth phase is actually behind now this piece of information which I just need to read, and we get into this very frenetic need to just find out more and more, and to think that healing is behind that. So it's quite interesting to do this temporary detox of inputting information and just kind of see what arises from that. So that is really everything when it comes to the course. Monica has put the QR code here, so anyone can scan the QR code and find out more about the pricing. We do a split pay, or you can pay up front. And the next course is going to start on May the 8th. So the course will start on May the 8th, and then on that following Friday, we'll do the first group call. And as I said, for anyone new who's joined, it lasts for 2 months. And we do the group calls once a week. And during those calls, that is when you have a chance to bio-individualize and ask any specific questions, and also engage in follow-up emails. So I think there are a few questions now. I'm going to check them out. So someone asked, can I join when I'm currently on medication for hypothyroid? So yes. So actually, we have quite a lot of people in the group coaching who have an autoimmune condition, and I mean that is if your hypothyroid is autoimmune. I know not all of them are, but yeah. So we have a focus on that, and I have many recipe books, and also just generally books on specifically the autoimmune protocol. So, I've shared with a lot of people in the group those resources, and they found them quite helpful. So yeah, it's definitely possible that the information will be useful for you too. What's your favorite success stories in terms of helping the client make a sustainable change? Uh, well, we actually have quite a few great videos on people's success stories, which I hope that we can share. I know one of them is a previous Facebook Live with his name's Patrick. So maybe you could scroll back and see that video. So Dr. Hyder and I interviewed him, and he was one of the success stories. But one thing I always say to kind of characterize what people make the most changes, and the best changes, and improve the most during the group coaching program is, what these people have in common is that they choose just a few modalities. So let's say fasting, cold plunges, and getting an earthing mat to sleep on. And then they really commit to these practices every day. Every day we're going to the river, swimming in the cold, every day using the earthing mat, every day doing fasting. And people who engage in those activities consistently over time see more benefit than people who do one thing for 1 week and then give up, or take one supplement for 1 week and then move on to something else, and have this idea that they need to integrate everything in the course. I mean, the course is a lot of information, and the idea is not necessarily to integrate everything at once, but to be intuitive enough, and also, of course, with our guidance, to know what might be specifically driving your symptoms. Is it nervous system, systemic inflammation, the exacerbation of a previous condition? What kind of symptoms do you have? And then choosing some practices to really stick to every day and be committed to. And I would say those are the people who've, seen 80 to 90% improvements. And those are the people actually who are also always on the call. So always joining the group call. Because, it's just really useful to hear other people's stories and what other people have tried. Because, other people in the group are actually going through this process. And that is really, really valuable. It's not just about getting my advice. So I would say, though, that's the important feature of success and instigating change. So someone asked, will you also have a special one-on-one with you after the program? Yes. So there's actually a lot of different ways to connect one-on-one. There's things like I do a one-time consultation, so it's possible to do that. It's also possible to do, different add-on services if you want more time. Usually I interview, the people who are really committed to the program. I actually interview them at the end of the program anyway, for, half an hour to an hour, just to get feedback on how it went and what their progress is. So that is just, naturally inbuilt into the program also. So yeah, and then of course the email. So I have an individual thread with many of the people on the program, as well as a group thread. So there is quite a lot of ways in which you can bio individualize. Okay, so I think this is it in terms of questions. If anyone has any more questions, they could put them in the comments section. What you can also do is book a free discovery call with me. So you can do that. If you scan the QR code, there should be an option to do that there. If not, you can reach out by email and to book a discovery call, just to speak, if you have any more specific questions about whether or not it's a good fit. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see some of you on the program, and see you next week.